Good evening, everybody. Hopefully you can all hear me. Welcome to a attempt at a Grotty special. We've got myself and we've got the Blood Angels Commander. Can you let us know if you can hear us both? I'm sure John's going to say something in a minute. He's still pissing about with his phone, trying to make it so he can record something.
Hello.
Let us know in the chat that you can hear us. Let us know that you can see things. It should all be working fine. So, John, have you made that camera work yet, or are you just going to give up?
I'm going to try one last time.
All right. Well, while you're buggering about with that, I'm going to talk about the important stuff. So, I've got important beer for today. So, this is a bottle of Bugman's 6X, all the way from Warhammer World. That is right. We've got actual Warhammer beer.
Cool. Thanks for sharing it with me. Appreciate it. Camera is working now. Just
camera is working now. Brilliant. So, we are going to try and record this if we can, and hopefully we'll edit it down and put it in a smaller video. But we are going to try and live paint a Blood Angel to a reasonable standard in a reasonably short amount of time, so that the Blood Angels Commander hasn't got any excuse to be running around with unpainted shit.
If we paint it in a reasonable amount of time, you're going to be here at 2 a.m. Hope you don't have work tomorrow.
Actually, I don't. It's Easter holidays. So, you're going to see me flit around between a couple of different models because naturally, John's bloody awkward and he's picked a model that's got all sorts of complicated things on it. So we're going to have to do this across a couple of them. But largely, you're going to see us take this little guy who's just played Playhouse Black, and we're going to take him all the way to a kind of battle-ready finished in one go. So before I get started, we'll just answer a couple of questions. Nice jar. It's a nice drink. YouTube does record it, Mike, but we're going to try and edit it down a bit because it'll be a bit unwieldy because there's all this sort of random chat in there. And Rezi says he's got excuses, and Mike likes you having excuses because then you pay him to paint your stuff. So we're going to start off then with some just a grey paint. Now, what I've tried to do with this whole scenario is use paints that John's got, and I'm not got any weird complicated stuff. So these are not necessarily the paints that I would choose, but they are the paints that we're going to use for today. So we're going to start off with a kind of a mid-grey, John.
Mid-grey, okay.
Mid-grey.
Like a Mechanica Standard or a Dawn
Mechanica Standard is a perfect start point for this. And we're going to take a nice blob of that. Now I've got just a dry palette here. But I'm going to work it into my dry brush.
Okay, so we're dry brushing this,
We're going to dry brush this over the entire model. So I'm just working it all in
with a big dry brush.
With the biggest dry brush, yeah, great big one. Look at that; it's bigger than his head. And we're going to just start off by dry brushing the whole model with this. And the purpose of this is it's going to pick out all the detail. And it's going to give us a good sort of starting point to build up all the rest of the detail on the model. So I'm not doing anything clever. I'm just little circles with a dry brush and I'm just building it up all over the whole thing.
Okay. I was going to say circles with the dry brush. Okay.
Yeah, so rather than just going up and down, scratchy, 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 we're doing more of like a circular motion. And what that's doing is it's kind of buffing on the colour. Because when we finish, the model's going to be grey, all right, with just black in the deepest recesses.
And are we doing the gun as well, or what?
Yeah, just go nuts. Don't overthink it. Just do the whole thing. Try and get in there. So between his legs.
Oh, it's going to be that sort of stream, is it?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody heard that.
Yeah, I like
getting between the Space Marine's legs. That's where we want to be. Okay.
And this is kind of our, for want of a better term, this is really our undercoat. This is what we're going to use to start.
I was going to say this isn't color on it. This isn't slap chop, is it?
No, I wouldn't slap chop because that would be trying to do something that doesn't exist. But we are going to use underpainting, which is the actual technique that slap chop is based on.
Okay. I mean, I don't know why we haven't made the slap chop video yet. I mean, Mike, I don't know why Mike's not made a slap chop video. They just get like 100,000 views because you put slap chop in the title.
If you put slap chop in the title of this, I will be very disappointed.
I've never done it.
Actually, I'm actually getting a little bit hot. So while you carry on doing that, I'm going to take my jacket off because I'm cooking.
Okay. Your model is going to turn out a million times better than mine, just saying.
Well, it shouldn't.
It's going to, but okay.
I got a new T-shirt for this stream, especially for you, John.
And what does it say? Because I can't see your camera.
Oh, you can't see my camera, can you? Hang on.
No.
I'll blow it up a little bit so you can see me a little bit better. There you
go. Did you make that yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay. I mean, you could have just asked for...
I went to some effort for this.
I get it. I know that somebody was trying to get the full resolution photo.
Well, yeah.
Perfect.
This is now my favourite T-shirt. I'm going to wear this for like all our streams.
If we go to Warhammer World and you turn up with that, you're dead. All right, I think I've done it.
Myself down. Have you done everything? Yeah. So you're brushing on. Don't be shy with this. You really want to get in there. So if I look at mine, I can see actually the shoulder pad could do with a little bit more.
I was going to say, can I switch this so you can? I think I can. Hold on. Let me see if I can. I mean, no one wants to see me anyway, right?
Well, no one can see me because I'm just in the corner.
Can you see my script? Can you see my guy now?
I can actually, yeah.
It's upside down. I don't know how to fix
yeah,
that.
he's looking good. He's looking good. Upside down doesn't matter. Flip him over.
Okay.
So yeah, that's not looking too bad. You've got one of those legs that's got much more on it than the other one. So try and even that out a little bit.
I think that's because I just put too much on that one leg because I'm terrible at speed painting.
Fair enough. That's why we're doing this. It's almost like there's a method to, or a reason why we're doing a speed painting episode.
Okay.
Mike's posted our channel on Discord, which is good because I meant to do that and I completely forgot.
Oh, thanks, Mike.
Cheers, Mike. So something that is quite important with this, and because we don't want to build up too much of a powdery or dry coat, is I'm actually going to make my dry brush a tiny bit wet. I know that sounds like a bonkers thing to say because it's a dry brush, but I just want to work a little bit of moisture into it, and that will stop me getting too much of a dry, nasty finish on there.
To be fair, it's not a dry paint, so that does make some sense to me.
So I just want to give it a nice smoother coat, and by doing that, it will just smooth it out. Now, we've done this layer, and we're going to start doing the next layer. Now, the next thing we're going to start doing is building up some interest and some highlights on here. So I'm going to take a white paint. I've just got some white Scar. I almost never use this paint because it's a bit rubbish, but I thought if there's a white John Scott, it might be this one.
Oh, I've got Vallejo model colour white.
Oh, even better. So just take a big old chunk of white paint, put it on whatever you're using to sort of dry brush with. So mine's on my palette here.
Yeah.
Take most of the paint off. Now, we want to take quite a lot of this paint off. Don't leave much on there at all. Okay. So really take most of it off because you don't want to be covering off with that lovely grey. Okay. So most of that's off there. And then we're going to very gently, now, unlike last time, we were just trying to really work it in, we're going to do this from the top. Okay, so we're just going to very gently, I've got too much paint still on there. We're going to very gently work, really gently with my dry brush from the top. And I'm going to work down with the white. Still too much paint, really. Okay, and what we're doing here is we're just building up the white in the raised areas. Okay, your model colour white is probably a lot better for this than this shite white is.
It's like the one paint that I don't use that's not Games Workshop is the white.
Well, to be honest, there's two that I think are fucking awful, and it's both whites actually, but like Korak's white is much better, and also they're black, and their black is terrible.
Are we just doing this like so it's catching raised edges from the top of the model, or are we going down onto legs?
Model, and we're working down, so you can sort of see from mine. I'm not trying to get in all the details. I'm just working it down. Take most of that off.
Okay.
And what this is doing is
I'm on brand tonight, though. Look at this. I got Citadel Medium. What is this? A synthetic dry brush. So if anyone from Games Workshop wants to sponsor us, we're here. We're using your products.
What I'm actually using here, Mike, is this thing that I'm using is a texture palette from Artis Opus. Really, it's a bit of laser cut MDF. Now, the important thing when you're dry brushing is it works a lot better if you don't have the brush too dry. I know it sounds bonkers, but if you use a bit of tissue paper or something, it sucks all the moisture out. And what that does is it means that the paint goes on very grainy. And we don't want that. We don't want a grainy finish. So I'm just working this down from the top. I'm not trying to get into the underside of the model. So if I look at it from the bottom, look, it's still black. If you can see that.
Okay.
So it's still really dark from the underneath. But from the top, it's looking pretty white. I'm going to keep working at this because I want to get a nice smooth coat.
I'm going to try and autofocus my camera. Hold on. How's that looking?
I should bring you up. Yeah, not too bad, but go a bit heavier, mate. Heavier than that.
Heavier.
So, yeah,
okay.
keep putting a bit more on there.
Tony is available for paint streaming. £25 an hour, right?
I'll be lucky. I don't dare take on any work at the moment. I've got a job for Mark on at the moment.
I was going to say, you sent me this like really detailed brief for doing this painting tonight, and I was like, dude, you've got like a 3-month-old baby. How the fuck are you finding time? Because my kids are way easier.
On this.
Oh, you've done a test as well, yeah. I was like, geez, oh, okay.
And then I found out that you picked the most complicated model ever.
But just, you tell me to get an intercessor. This is an intercessor.
You've got some fucking lieutenant model. He's got purity seals. He's got pouches on him. He's got a bare head.
I mean, I would have preferred one without the bare head, but this guy had it. I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't have many. This is actually an easy to build intercessor. I guess I used them all.
I think this one isn't an easy to build intercessor, but the one that I did a tester on was. But to be honest, something that I've learned when I'm doing these is, although pouches and that can look cool, they take bloody ages to paint, so I tend to bin them off.
Are you wanting it even heavier than this?
Well, you can see how heavy I'm going, mate.
Fucking hell, you've been white scars over here, dude.
Yeah. We're basically going to get to white scar from the front and from the top, and then underneath, black Templars.
Right, I've got loads to go then.
So we're just building it up over time. Don't rush it, just building it up. The more we put on at this stage, the brighter our final finish will be. And I like a nice bright one. And unfortunately, the only contrast paint you've got, which is Blood Angels Red, is a bit dull. So we need to have a really bright base point to work from.
Okay.
If you're going to do... I quite like the new Bile Red for this, or a red ink. Oh, someone sent us something. What we got while you're carrying on? Mike wants to do a joint stream. I'd love to do a joint stream with you, Mike. And Carter sent us a $5.50 super chat. Cheers, Carter. You're an absolute legend. He says, I love this. Been super busy lately, but I'm glad I'm catching this. Lots of love. Lots of love to you too, Carter.
Thank you so much, Carter. We
cheers very much. It really is appreciated. It can go towards those stupid retro paints that I bought earlier.
Did you buy them, did you?
I did, yeah. By the time you pay for like import and stuff, it worked out about 50 quid.
Oh, is it from America, is it?
No, I think it's from Europe.
Europe, okay.
Okay, so once I've got to this stage here,
yeah,
which I think I'm a little bit ahead of yours at the moment.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with another hole.
Go with another coat or so. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch now to get rid of the dry palette. So that can go away, and I'm going to switch over to the wet palette. I'm not going to do anything really complicated, but because I want this to really sort of pop, if I can get my wet palette open.
Boiled by the wet palette. Stream's over, guys.
Yeah.
Good evening, Constantine.
I'm going to take a little brush and I'm going to take a bit of this white paint on my wet palette, which hopefully people can see in the thingy. And I'm going to do a tiny amount of edge highlighting. Not much at all. A really small amount. But all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it around the kind of the gorget. So around his neck, and then a little bit on his face. So on the ridge above his eyes, on that kind of funny face plate. Now yours is going to be a little bit different because you're doing a bareheaded guy. But the idea kind of goes. So I'm just doing a tiny bit of edge highlighting around the face of the model, because that's where people are going to be looking. They're going to be looking at the face and they're going to be looking at the hands. So if you're going to do any edge highlighting, even when you're speed painting, that's where you want to focus it. So I've just done a little bit on his hands there. I'm just doing around his gun.
Am I white enough yet here?
I don't know how to answer that. I think we'll be here all day if you do any more white.
Okay.
How's it taking you so long to get it to go white?
Because I think I've been very cautious that I've not overloaded the dry brush.
We'll be
I guess
fine.
when I'm... Okay.
It'll be fine. So we're just putting a few little highlights. Now, because you've got a bare face to do.
I did say to you that I've never speed painted in my life, so
well, that's why we're doing
I mean
it.
that you know.
So I've got another model here, which I'm going to use because you need to do a bare face. So I've got just a random model. I think he's an infiltrator. And I'm just going to quickly white his face up a bit. This bloody paint is shite.
Yeah, I hate the Games Workshop white paint. I do not advocate that you use it. I think I painted one set of Sangre Guard wings, and then it was like, I'm never using this white again. I got to find me something else. And the one that I actually picked up was off Amazon. It's like, fine.
Nobody saw that, but I just switched to a better white.
Okay, no one saw that.
Nobody saw that. We're just going to switch.
You calling it out definitely meant no one saw it.
Yeah, we switched to a better white. Yeah, so I'm being honest though, aren't I? Because the white that I was using was shit, and it was driving me mental. So I've switched to a better white, and I've just quickly dry brushed his face in. Now with something like this, we're still doing the same as we did with the helmet. All right, I know this looks shit, but it doesn't matter. But the difference is that we're going to focus on a slightly different point. So with your guy here, on your bare head, you want to focus on the areas that need it the most. So sort of along the ridge of the nose.
Yep. I'm on that.
The eyebrows, maybe a little bit along the cheekbones. And just sort of work a little bit of that paint. And then around the edge of the hair as well. So we're just working it in.
Okay.
Just because that's where we want to draw a bit of attention to.
All right.
When we go on. Okay, so same deal. Go around it. We've done that. And now it's time to do the next stage.
Perfect. What is the next stage?
So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn him into a Blood Angels from a White Scar. And the trick to doing this, we're going to use contrast paint. And the problem with contrast paint is the contrast effect, which we don't want.
Okay.
We don't want it to work like contrast paint. The contrast paint is designed to pull itself into the ridges of the like the folds and that of the model.
Yes.
And that's fine, and that works great if you've got a model that's got lots of detail on it.
Okay.
But we haven't. We've got armour. So if it does that on the armour, then it's going to look shit.
Okay.
Because what will happen is we'll end up with a really horrible blotchy finish. And that's why contrast is such a crappy rep.
Okay.
So
please tell me you're going to tell me how to fix that, because I have literally no idea.
We've got our Blood Angels red paint, and I've just wobbled the camera, so I'm just fixing that. So Blood Angels red paint, it's not one of the best contrast paints, but it's okay. It's just not... we're going to give it a really good shake, because otherwise it comes out really glossy, which isn't a lot of fun. And I'm going to put it on something. Now, I've got these little dishes to use, but really you can use anything you want. Just something that you can mix on. Because we're going to take this paint, and I'm going to mix it down, more or less...
With what?
50-50 with a bit of water. That's it. So I've got a little blob of paint in there. Bring it across so you can see it a bit better.
We need quite a bit of this paint, right? Because it's we're doing the whole model.
Yeah, we are, but not really. See how much I've done in there, just a couple of drops. And I'm going to mix it because we're going to water it down 50-50. So we'll have twice as much as I've put in there. So more or less 50-50 with a bit of water. And then I'm going to take a big normal brush.
Yeah.
Mix it up. And we're going to start painting that onto the model. Now
like a medium sized sort of brush, yeah.
Well, this is a size 5, so it's pretty huge.
Okay, yeah, so quite big.
Pretty big brush. Okay. You can try and avoid areas that you're going to not want red, but really don't worry too much about it. Now, the important thing while you're doing this is don't overload your brush, so don't flood it. So you can see I've just wiped it off a little bit on my finger. And try not to go over the same place too many times before it's dry. So we're going to work our way around the model. And I don't want any blotches, so if I see it pooling anywhere, I'm going to pull it away. And I'm just going to work my way around all of the armour of this model. Okay.
How thick should this be looking? Like, is it going to be quite translucent?
It's going to be very translucent because we watered it down quite a bit.
Okay.
And that's fine, but we do want to get it on. Even in the areas that are still black, because you didn't dry brush them earlier, still want to get that red paint in there. Because although you're not going to be able to see it, it's going to blend it together much nicer. And it will just mean that you've got that red showing through.
We're even going to do like the armor joints and stuff.
You can, but don't worry about that too much, because obviously the armor joint's going to be black in the end. So we're just working it in and work this all around the model. You probably will end up doing 2 or 3 coats because we want to get a nice saturated red. But what we really absolutely don't want, it's better to be too thin at this stage than pooling, because pooling is going to make it look blotchy and shit. And that's what we want to get away from.
Spot brushes here. Something that's less frayed.
Yeah, it's quite a shit brush, that one, John. That one's quite good, though. That one's all right.
I never really paint with large brushes like this.
It's something that I started doing years ago, and I found that I got a smoother finish when I used a much bigger brush. Because when I'm using a little tiny detail brush, I feel like I've got more control, but I end up with a very sort of almost blotchy finish to it.
Yeah, you get a lot of strokes.
And
you can see the brush strokes sometimes as well, yeah.
So by using a big brush, you sort of avoid that. So one tip that I often give people is to use the biggest brush that fits in the hole you're trying to paint. So if I can't fit it in the hole, then I need a smaller one. Yeah. So I'm not going to do eyes with this, but the tip on it is good. So if the tip's good enough, you can get pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
It's rare for me to switch down to a much smaller brush on something like this. I can do most of it with this big one. It just gives me a smoother finish.
Right.
So we're just going to work it around all the areas that should be red. We're going to see where we left the hair attached to it, and then we're going to be bugged by that later.
Okay. All right, I'm working on it.
So I'm just trying to catch up with the chat a little bit as well while we're doing this. John can thin his scarlet down to a near glaze. Okay. Yeah, you can. You can thin it really thin. Mike, this stuff's amazing through an airbrush. Yeah, it is, but I still prefer other colours. I will say that of the reds available, you've got Flesh Terrors and Bile Red. That the Blood Angels Red is my least favourite.
Oh, it's funny. So the one that I bought is your least favourite?
Yeah, I've got all of them. I've tried all of them. It's just the Flesh Terrors, I think, is a more just deeper colour.
I was going to say it'll be deeper red, one crimson.
It's maybe more crimson almost, and it's just a bit nicer actually, to be honest. And then the Bile Red is super second edition bright red sort of thing. It's almost like an ink. It has almost no contrast effect whatsoever, which is great because the contrast effect for things like armour is useless. It's actually a hindrance. We've had to water it down to get rid of that.
Do you use contrast medium at all in or no?
I don't, to be honest. I know what it's for, and it's to do what we've just done, and it also allows you to make your own contrast paint. Because you can mix it with a normal paint.
Okay. But you don't do that.
Just don't find that it's necessary, to be honest. It does allow you, if you want to put an interesting brown or something and put it on a highly textured thing, but for any sort of flat surfaces, I want to get away from the contrast effect rather than promoting that, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So we're just going to keep building it up. Hopefully, when we get to the top and we finish the top, the bottom bit should be dry. And then we can go back in and put another coat.
I assume that I'm just like leaving the Aquila here on the chest as well. I'm not contrast reading that.
I've contrasted it because I can't be asked to not.
Okay.
And the beauty of this sort of technique that we're using is it doesn't matter. So I'm really just slopping it on here. The only thing I'm being careful of is I don't want any pooling. I don't want to do any pooling, and I don't want to go back to a bit as it's drying because it will rip the paint. And then that will look really shit. Now, we're just building it up, and it's fine that some areas are dark. So you look around his feet and things, it's quite dark in there where it was black before. And that's fine. Yeah. It's just going to give us a bit more definition. Now, people watching at home, if you were trying to copy this and it's not quite looking as good, or maybe you went a bit heavy with the dry brush, what you can do is you can go in before the red with a bit of Nuln Oil and do a bit of panel lining. And just put it in those areas that you've got a bit too white that you didn't want white.
I'm sure anyone that's copying along has definitely done better than I have, so don't feel too bad about it.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
I was quite nervous, to be honest.
I think you're going to have to do quite a lot of coats because you're really not... You haven't got the hang of slapping it on there, John. It's
no, well, I mean, I must
slap it on and then chop it away.
Yeah, it's just, it feels very alien. This is too thin, is it? Okay.
It's not too thin. It's just you're going to use a couple of coats, mate. The thinner it is, the less effect you're going to get from the contrast, which is a good thing. But the more coats it's going to take to get a real depth of colour. Because you can see where mine's coming up now, and it's starting to look quite red.
Oh yeah, it's looking quite red. Okay. Does look like it's dried on the feet, though.
So then you can start going and put another coat in there. Just be careful to not do it while it's wet. You can cheat and use a hairdryer or something if you want. But I don't like doing that on stream because people can hear the hairdryer.
I was going to say, yeah. I'll wake my daughter up if I do that. So
yeah. So I'm just going to, while I'm waiting for you, I'm just going to catch up on the chat a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So Resial likes his Flesh Terrors as well. I think Flesh Terrors is good. It works very well through the airbrush. Looks really, really nice. Might use it on his Tech Marine. It's apparently I've said something that's a bit dodge sounding, which sounds about right. Contrast medium is good, but there's a ton of alternatives with different properties. Yeah, absolutely. It's fine. It's the thing. If you're already setting the... So James Richard, if you're already setting the light values of zenithal or pre-shade, then Bile is probably the best to go for an airbrush over. I've seen someone do 50-50 Bile and Flesh Terrors mix also. Yeah, you can do. I just use Bile straight, to be honest. I like that really bright red. Chrono, would you thin down Bile red? I would thin it down a touch because although it's not nearly as strong, the contrast effect, it does still come in and it can go a bit blotchy. It's just a bit better for going blotchy than the Blood Angels red, which is Blood Angels red is a proper contrast paint. It will go into the darker cracks and it will do things like that. Whereas Bile red is almost like an ink. You can use an ink. An ink can look great for this. I've got some Crimson ink, which looks really, really good. If you've not got any contrast paint, or I'm sure Army Painter do one or whatever. The only problem with the Army Painter one is if you're going to work it, you've got to make sure you varnish between steps. I've heard their new paint doesn't reactivate, but I haven't bought any to test it.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty big flaw to me that it reactivated it.
It's fine if you're doing like this. If all you're going to do now is go painting some details and call it a day, then it's fine. It doesn't matter. But if you wanted to weather it or use various washes and things like that on it, then it would become a problem. Airbrush makes speed painting a whole different thing. If you own one, definitely a superior method. Yeah, absolutely, it's a superior method, Resi. But the point is that we're trying to do this without using... Basically, we're doing this without using the tools that John hasn't got. So I contacted him earlier in the week. I said, John, what things have you got? And we're using those to do this.
Yeah, and I'm just all very old school. Small brush, take my time. Doesn't matter. I don't care how long it takes me to do my models. I just like them to look clean.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
It is also frustrating, though, with like 2 kids just never actually finishing anything.
Yeah. I got into trying to speed paint things because I have very limited time because of my job and that anyway. And I was painting things for other people, and I found that I'd never get any of my own stuff done.
Yeah.
And I hate playing with unpainted miniatures, and I just felt like a dick. So I started practicing different techniques to try and speed things up.
Cool. Okay.
Okay. So
Cool
just trying to look at yours a little bit. I think round those feet could do with a bit more because they're still looking a bit almost brownish.
I think when this dries down, I think it's going to need a 3rd coat. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you might need a 3rd coat on there. So checking at the chat again, Rezzy's very interested in the Vallejo one. It does look good. I just haven't bought any yet to try them out. I have bought the Scale Colour Instant Colours, but they're very subtle. I'm not the biggest fan, if I'm honest. James Richard, can't wait for them to reach the immortal question when painting the chapter. Black chest Aquila or gold? Poll in the chat. I could poll in the chat, but we're not going to because I haven't told John to prepare any gold paint. So we're going to do it black. John should make a gold for an airbrush on his channel. You can get a good one with a mini compressor for about £75. You can, but if I'm honest, I don't really like them. I'd rather spend a bit more and have a real one.
I think my issue with is I've got nowhere I would use it. I think a lot of people airbrush in like a garage or something like that, right? My garage is full of kid stuff.
This is it's my little office. I haven't got an extractor or anything. I have got a window behind me. This isn't my painting desk. This is actually my working desk. My paint desk is behind me. There's a window there, and as long as you're not being too heavy-handed, you'll be all right. So I'm just waiting for mine to dry while you catch up at the moment, John.
Yeah, no problem. Getting there.
Mike paints his Aquilas white. Very nice. Don't use this paint because it's fucking awful. In fact, it's bugging me so much while you're doing that. I'm going to go back to the dry brush and catch this guy back up to where we are. After I tried to use that shit paint on him, it was just so horrible and rubbish.
Okay.
Dark Ginger, what would be the best white to paint white scars? Recommendations? Depends on how you want to do it. I quite like not using white to paint white scars. I know that sounds bonkers, but Celestria Grey is quite a nice colour. And it means that you can leave the pure white for your final highlights.
Yeah, I was going to say do Celestia Grey and then Praxi White. I actually quite like the Praxi White. Have you used that? The dry paint?
Praxi White? No, I haven't. I haven't used any.
It's actually quite good. This is it. Praxi White. I like it. I use it on all my Sangre Guard wings. I think it's pretty nice.
No, fair enough. I've not used any of the dry paints, to be honest. It's one type of paint that I've never really been all that interested in.
No, I mean, as a noob, when you go into the Games Workshop store and you want a dry brush, they sell you dry paint. And
yeah, I know. Or you can just use regular
paint
it, I guess. And not put as much on there, work a bit out.
I was going to say, I'm the noob. You got to remember.
You're bloody not a noob. You've been painting these things longer than I have, I think.
Not to the same standard.
It's just different focus, isn't it? But yeah, so it depends also a little bit, Dark Ginger, if you're going to use an airbrush. Now, for white scars, it's much easier to do it with an airbrush than not an airbrush. And if you have got one, then going through with like a Tamiya flat white on an airbrush will get you an incredible finish because you can thin it so much, you can really build up nice gradients. Right, how are we doing, John?
I think we're there. I think that's 3 coats.
Right, okay. You're not going to do his helmet red?
I mean, he's a lieutenant. Is it not going to be gold?
I don't know. Paint helmet whatever fucking colour you like. Mine's red because he's intercessor?
Because you're doing speed painting. Okay, well this is why I'm slow at painting, because even on the normal guys, I find shit that I want to do different. Anyway,
one of the key things with doing this is to try and use a limited palette, because the more colours you bring in, the more changes you've got to do. So even for this, I've used more colours than I normally would. I'd normally just mix them so that I can get away with having even less.
Okay, I'm surprised I don't hate this red. Like, I actually quite like the red that's come out with.
It's quite a nice sort of deep red. I think this is quicker than doing it with... I know you just spray them all red. And I think this comes out quicker. Right, so next stage then, we're going to go back to our wet palette. Have you got yours handy there, John?
I've got a palette, yes.
Haven't you just bought a wet palette?
You see, haven't I just bought it? I mean, I bought it like a year ago at this point, and it's been sat in the box for a year. Didn't you hear this? When I said I got 2 kids, man. The only time I get in here is usually when I'm A, making YouTube videos, or B, streaming painting. There's no time for experimentation, unfortunately.
Well, streaming painting is the best time to experiment, isn't it?
But well, yeah, but if I want to finish any models, then no, I guess.
Yeah. So I've got a fairly big brush. So this is a size 2, but you can use whatever you're comfortable with. And I've got a little bit of this black paint, and I've put it on my wet palette because I want to thin it down just a touch. Now, if you're one of these people that are not using a wet palette, then put a single drop of water in there. Maybe just use a single brush full or something. We just want to take the edge off. The black I'm using here is just a Vallejo one.
All right, well, I got Abaddon black, so cool. What you want me to do with this, sorry? So
we're just going to put a little bit on our brush, and we're going to black out all the areas that we don't want to be red, basically. And we're just going to work our way around the model. Now you can, if you want, just leave that like that, and if you like that sort of grayscale look, but I don't. I want it blacked out, so I'm going to work my way around the model, and I'm just going to black out all these other areas. Now you've got to be a bit careful when you get close to the red, because the downside for this technique is if you fuck it up and it's really obvious, you can't go back in and fix it later, because you can't get that same tone of red that you've currently got.
Yeah, I get you.
So that's why when earlier on we did a little bit of edge highlighting with the white before we put the red on. And that's because we needed to do our edge highlights before we did our red, and that will just show through. So if you look on mine especially, surround the collar and that is a bit brighter. And that was those edge highlights I put in. Now if you get a little bit on the model, it doesn't really matter, because it's black and it will just look like a little bit of weathering or something when we finish it off. But, you know, just try not to get any big splodges across his legs or something.
Yep. This is where I'm good. I'm accurate. I'm slow as shit, but I'm accurate.
Good. So we're going to work our way around, and we're going to black out everything that's not going to be red, basically. We're not truly speed painting here, because if we were, we wouldn't be wasting our time blacking things out.
Okay.
We're sort of more army painting, if you know what I mean. We're trying to get a decent standard in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Whereas with speed painting, what you'd do is you'd probably just dry brush the whole thing silver or something like that and call it a day. And then bosh a load of washes over the top to cover up your fuck ups.
Yeah, I'm more on board with what you're doing here, though, than just.
We're just trying to use shortcuts to get the army painted.
I feel like if I was going to do my second army at some point, this is the way I would do it, because I don't have 8 years of my life to dedicate to a second army.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just being really careful around these joints.
Yeah, I hear you.
Just blacking them out. Just kind of ribbing, because they're ribbed for your pleasure.
You're going to try and get the stream demonetized again, aren't you?
I want to know why the 2 videos that we've got demonetized are demonetized, and I wish it told you why.
Yeah.
So that
I think it just I was going to say, it just demonetizes it. It doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah, it just says
at least my
this video is limited
ad revenue.
Yeah. I'm sure I must have called someone to see you next Tuesday, and apparently that's an automatic demonetization.
Yeah, Kev did it on the stream the other night when we were playing a live game, and then Colin did it the week after, and I was like, "Oh, thanks, guys! 2 weeks in a row." I mean, I did pull both those victories out of the bag, so I mean, I guess that's fair.
It's so I think it unduly penalises Australians.
I don't know that many Australians, honestly.
No, they like saying that word.
Do they?
Oh yeah, it's my favourite swear word as well, to be fair.
Well, you say that, in the next couple of years, your favourite swear word will change, because we are now trying to always say frack.
Really?
Well, we've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and they're like sponges. So yes, we're saying frack, which is very difficult to say when you like slam.
Well, I definitely said at some point last night. I definitely said, "Oh, for fuck's sake, will you stop crying?"
Oh, I'm glad that's not. We've been there. We've been there. Michael was running around with a toy the other night. We're trying to watch Blood of the Dragon or whatever it's called, House of the Dragon.
Oh yeah.
Michael's running around with a little remote control car that's just playing a Nino siren for like 10 minutes. After like 8 minutes, I just snapped and was like, "Michael, can you take any other toy? We're trying to watch the damn TV." I've heard Nino like 15 million times. Everyone in the chat's going to be bored of us talking about our kids anyway.
Yes, sir. I'm just trying to catch up on it now. James is plugging Cult of Paint, and Reddy says I won't mind, and it's. And so James says I don't mind either. I do. I love Cult of Paint. They are. Andy Wardle is my absolute painting idol.
So hold on, these new heavy metal paint? No, they're not heavy metal. Coat d'Arms paints you bought today.
Well, they're not Coat d'Arms. They're war paints or something.
But they've matched the Coat d'Arms colours, or what?
They've colour matched the old colours supposedly. Now, Coat d'Arms is the original manufacturer for GW paints,
and they're a French company.
I don't know actually. I think so, but they Citadel brought it in house.
Yeah.
And that's what we currently buy, Citadel's own in-house paint. So the war painters or war color, whatever they are just colour matched to the old ones. Now, that to me sounds like a great thing because I love the colour of the old paints, but the actual old paints were fucking awful.
They were so thin, weren't they?
They were so dreadful. They had terrible coverage. So if you've got a modern behaving paint with old kind of finish and colour, that sounds fantastic to me.
Oh, well, then you'll need to let us know how that works out for you.
All right. That'll be fun. So, how are you getting on with the blacking out then?
I've beaten you. I'm done.
You're done? You've done his chest and done all the joints and whatnot, done his guns?
Oh, we're doing the gun as well?
Well, of course you are, unless you want to have a white gun.
Okay, we're doing the gun as well. Well, I mean, I've beaten you doing the armour, so I mean, I'm ahead on one thing.
You have. And you probably will beat me. I'm taking my time here. I'll say we're not
so maybe I'm not. I was going to say, so maybe I'm not super slow at doing all the joints and stuff. I'm just pernickety about actually making things right.
Well, that's
so
all right, isn't it?
That's what slows me down.
Yeah. So anything that's going to be silver and that, you also want to make sure you've blacked out. So I'm just going around the vents and that on his backpack.
Okay.
I'm just making sure that I've blacked all these out. Hoping people can see me because I think the camera keeps refocusing itself. There we go. I'll just catch up in the chat while you're finishing that last bit.
Yeah, sure.
Quick survey, what colour should the pad trims be? Depends on the guy. I like mine red, but whatever you fancy, really. Darren Latham painted a chapter metallic silver because he wanted minis on the table rather than end his project. Yeah, absolutely that. That's why I've got custodes. Turkey, on the topic of airbrushing, please make sure to use proper ventilation and respiratory protection when airbrushing. Cumulative inhalation of aerolized paint particles is not good for you. Neither is the amount of paint that I've eaten.
I think that's what I mean.
Yeah. Mike's reminding you, John, that you can just pay him to paint your second army.
I know. I mean, that is tempting.
Resi's also suggesting that we could just swap swearing, but that would be no fun at all. I like swearing. Alternatively, you can paint all those parts something like Dark Reaper and Shade later. You can, but I just don't like that way of doing it. Tony, the camera keeps refocusing as your head appears under the camera. Oh, does it? Oh, okay. That's my own.
I was going to say you're leaning forward too much, maybe.
Probably.
James, everybody paints a bit like hunched over like Gollum, don't they?
Yeah, I do, definitely. James, I always love getting the black paint on. Contrast between it and the red immediately starts making things come together. Yeah, it does. I think it looks a lot better once you've got the black on there. I just realised I've missed a bit. You can see I haven't used any tiny brushes. This is the smallest one we've used is a size 2.
Yeah, well, I'm using a layer small, but I think that's probably equivalent of a size 2.
No, it's not.
That's
probably the equivalent of about size 1, even a size 0.
No, because I usually always paint with the element game character, and that's a size 1, and that's smaller than this. Maybe it's not. Maybe this is a size 1 then.
Yeah. I have got a size 1. We will use that later to do his eyes. Okay, so how are you getting on, John? Where are you up to?
Yeah, I think I'm done. I'm just adding a little bit more black to I can happily to move on. Excuse me. Use your words.
So we're going to start adding a few highlights now. Again, a bit like we did with the edge highlights earlier. We're not going to edge highlight the whole model. Nobody's going to look at the whole model because they're going to focus on certain things, and you want them to focus on certain things because you can get away with doing other areas that maybe not quite as well. So I've got a little bit of Mechanica Standard Grey here.
Okay.
On my wet palette. And then I'm just going to use the edge of my brush, and we're going to put a couple of highlights on that black that we've just done. Now, we're not going to do all of it. We're just going to do a couple of things. So, for example, take the edge off on my thumb. We're just going to do along the top of this bolter here.
Okay.
So the black bit of the bolter, so that's the bit we're not going to paint silver. Did a couple of edge highlights on there. Because people look at guns. The gun is something that focuses your attention, or weapons in general.
Okay.
So they're an area that's worth spending the extra time on. So if you've got like a nice power weapon on there, then spending a bit of time getting a nice blend on it is going to make the whole thing look a lot better. Even if you haven't bothered to paint his feet, you know. Because nobody's looking at his feet. Same as nobody's going to turn him upside down and check whether you've done the underside of him.
Oh man, I just put transfers on the underside of my Terrax last night. Don't say that.
Didn't you get Mike to do your Terrax?
Yeah, but I put the transfers on it.
Really? Oh, I've got Mike to do that as well. So we're going to put them on some of the Aquila because the Aquila is going to draw the eye. So again, I'm just taking the edge off the paint and I'm just putting a couple of little highlights on there, just along the top. And then kind of the final kind of half of the feathers. I'm trying to be fairly neat here, but we're not going to go crazy. If it's not beautifully neat, it's not the end of the world.
All right.
So we're just putting on the last sort of third of each feather. And a little bit on that skull thing in the middle or whatever you've got to do with it. And then on those funny little pipes off because I've got a helmet on mine. There we go. I'm not doing any of the ridges really. I might put a little bit on this ridge here because it's in his inside arm and you can see that from the front. But all this stuff underneath, you can't see it anyway, so who cares? Robert White, send me all your unfinished units, John. I'll base coat them all for you. I've got Cult of Paint Evolution, the King of Base Coating. Would take me an afternoon. There you go, there you go, John. Robert's going to base coat your models for you. That's a nice brush, the Cult of Paint Evolution. I've got an Evolution Silverline. I'd like an Infinity, but I just can't justify that kind of money.
Oh, like it's an airbrush.
Yeah. It's a very nice airbrush. Come on, stay focused on the model. Right, how are you getting on?
I mean, I'm fine. I'm happy
we've not
enough.
Gone crazy. You see how much highlights I've put on there? Hardly any at all.
Yeah, I hardly put any on there. Yeah,
it just doesn't need it. It's just not necessary. So I'm going to switch over to another model now because we need to do your pouches and things.
Okay.
So I've got here the most useless of Blade Guard.
Oh yeah, the Blade Guard Ancient.
The Blade Guard Ancient. And what we're going to do is we're going to take some Rhinox hide.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to base all of the pouches with that.
Okay.
So keep this focus for a second.
It's a great blush, but God, she guzzles the paint. Do different airbrushes use paints at different rates?
It depends on how you set it up, to be honest. So I'm going to go back to my big old brush here as well because I don't need to use a little one for this. It'll be here all day. So I've got a bit of Rhinox hide. You put double water in it just to take the edge off. And then we're going to work it in to the pouches. Again, we might want a couple of coats because we really want this brown to be very opaque. We don't want to let... You can try and use thin paint to get a bit of shading through and stuff, but I think it just looks a bit shit, to be honest, doing it that way. It's different if you can use contrast paint. Something like Snakebite Leather will do this for you in one hit.
Okay.
But we're not going to do that. We're going to paint it the classic way, even though we're on the clock.
Yeah, that's what I'm used to, though.
I suspect that this is as far as this model will ever come.
To the Blade Guard Ancient, I'm surprised you made yours. Mine, I think I still have both of them on the sprue from Indomitus.
I built it, and because I built all of Indomitus up, but I've never got any further than that because he's shocking.
I still haven't built the Captain from Indomitus. I still haven't built both the Blade Guard Ancients. I built one Judiciar, because I guess you need that. And then I feel like there's something else in that box I never built.
Fair enough. I don't think actually that's not fair. I didn't build all the Necrons up.
Oh, was there not a Chaplain in that box as well?
I've built that, not painted it though.
I cut that Chaplain in half and stuck him on an Outrider, and there was a Chaplain on a bike that I didn't have to pay like $35 for. Clever.
Okay, so catching up in the chat. Resi thinks Harder and Steinbach are too expensive. Well, they're not so bad in Europe. They're just more expensive in the US. They're a lot cheaper than like Badgers and things like that over here. I'm getting used. Yuan's getting used to his airbrush. Not really a fancy one, but it's fine. You don't need a really fancy one. James loves standards. I love standard bearers. I just don't like this one.
Yeah, the Terminator one is pretty cool. The Terminator one might get some play now that Terminators are toughness 5, huh?
Yeah, no idea. I didn't mind the Terminator one before. I like the fact that you could teleport him where you needed an ancient, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and he's got a Thunder Hammer, or he can have a single Lightning Claw, and now he has toughness 5. I mean, toughness 5 is going to make a big difference with Terminators, I feel like. Plus, AP's down as well. You know, like,
yeah, absolutely.
if AP is down, then 2-up armor save becomes pretty sexy.
Could be. Turkey says that God can see the underside of his models, so he doesn't want to be found wanting when Judgment Day comes. I'll take it up with
That's
God.
why I put. I was going to say that's why I put transfers on the bottom of the Terrax. Someone might turn the Terrax over.
If someone turns my model over, I've got more weird things about. You know, stop looking up the skirt on the Space Marines.
Okay.
Absolute lunatics.
Right, I've done the pouches. I've even done the belt because I can't not do the belt when it's right there. So I've painted the belt Rhinox hide as well.
Fair enough. So now I've taken a kind of mid-brown. This is Mournfang Brown.
Yes, I've got that too.
I actually like Rhinox hide. That is a paint that I'm rather fond of, and I do regularly use that one. So I'm going to take that, and what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to not paint the recesses. Okay, I'm going to paint the main bulk of the model. I've got a nice thin coat of it because I'm not too worried about getting a super opaque finish, because if it looks a little bit scratchy because of the brush strokes and that's fine. It will just make it look a little bit more leathery. So I'm using little short strokes with the brush rather than long smooth ones, and in all different directions, and that's just building a tiny bit of texture into that.
Into those pouches. That's funny. I almost do the exact opposite in that I would use a lighter brown and then I would just hit it with null oil. But I think both ways are pretty similar, right?
Something that could be considered a flaw in my painting is I don't like washes very much.
Fair.
I don't like the lack of control they give me. So I've got to put a null oil here, which is still the same one from that test when I tested it with the new ones, and I gave away a few of them.
Oh, you monster! I had to buy a few of them on eBay at like $8.99 a pot.
No, I gave one away. Just don't use them. So catching up on the chat again while you're doing it, Mike did paint all of his Indomitus box because he's a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, I don't paint models if they're not competitive, is how I do it.
I paint them because I think they're cool. And that's about it, really. Yuan got his brush with a compressor. I personally recommend getting a good compressor and a cheap brush, because you can always get a better brush later. But a reasonable compressor with a nice air tank on it, I think, is worth the faff.
Right, you're done.
You done? Right, wicked.
Yeah.
So now what we want to do is add a little bit of interest to this. So I'm going to take a little bit of an ivory colour. This is, for me, is just Vallejo ivory. But anything, Rakarth flesh can work. Any kind of pale, not white colour. That's what we're really looking for. And I'm going to put a little blob of this on my wet palette here. And I'm going to mix. So I've got somewhere but sort of halfway between the ivory and that Mornfang brown.
Okay.
And I'm going to be really sparing with this. I'll put a bit more in there. Like that. Now what we're going to do is we can't really be bothered to try and paint this whole thing because it'll take us forever. So what we're going to do is we're going to take most of the paint off on our finger, and we're going to kind of tippy tap it along some of the edges. So along the top, I'm just tapping it along the edge. I'm not edge highlighting it, I'm tapping it, because I don't want to do a full line. I just want to get like a few little dots or whatever along that side. So you can sort of see what I'm doing here.
Okay.
And what this is going to do is it's going to have the same effect as edge highlighting, but it's also going to be, again, add a little bit of texture to the model to make it look a little bit more realistic. I'm just doing some tippy taps along there, all the way around the edges, like that. And then I'm going to very gently, with the very tip of my brush, just do a couple of little scratches here and there as well. And then I'm going to make sure I put a little bit heavier on the corners, maybe, because corners are the sort of places that are going to get worn. I'm even going to go a little bit lighter, a little bit more ivory in there, just for those very, very corner bits where that just going back in under the camera again, just where that's likely to get worn out because it's going to scrape on things. I'm just tippy tapping along the edges there, and that's going to be it done, really.
Okay.
Hopefully you can see that, and that's going to look a bit more worn and a bit more like leather rather than just brown, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect.
So I'm just catching up again. James used his blade guard to make Sanguinius priest. Yuan's finished his Lich Guard, and he's working. Oh, he's finished his Brutalis and Desolation as well. Bloody hell, you're working quick. If Resi's taking the piss that us Europeans get harder and Steambex cheaper than American products, which is fairly unsurprising. There's not many options over here, Resi, to be honest. You can get some Tamiya ones, but you can pay a lot of money for those. Speaking of boxes, I don't think I'll be getting the new editions as Robert White. Nothing really there for Black Templars, and I can pick up the models I want on Troll Trader. Yeah, makes sense.
What do you mean there's nothing for Black Templars? Toughness 5 Terminators? That'd be nice for Black Templars, wouldn't it?
Well, they'll probably have their own fancy ones, won't they? Mike, I'm also of the opinion, don't touch my models if you didn't ask, let alone turn them over. Yeah, exactly, Mike. I don't like people touching my models. I get a little bit annoyed by that.
Okay. Don't touch the models.
Well, let's just ask first, you know? Don't just go, oh, I'll have that. Yuan says if he's got a Dreadnought, he'll get the box. Resi paid 80 quid for his Badger, sorry, $80. Chrono agrees with me and Mike. Apparently I'm making hot takes. Doesn't like Divine Liquid non-loyal. I just don't see the point. I don't like the lack of control.
Okay.
Yeah, Resi, there's loads of nice brands of airbrush about. There's just not many that are readily available here. Or if they are, they're quite significantly inflated in price. Okay, so are you done with that, John?
Yeah, I'm just hitting something else with a bit of black.
You doing some tippy tapping?
Yeah, I've done it. I'm good.
You tippy tapped out, are you?
Yeah.
Right, wicked. Let's go back then and start putting some more interesting things on there. So should we do the skin tones now?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, so you want to get kind of a mid skin tone. I'm going to use Kislev Flesh or whatever colour you want to do.
I am going to use Cadian Flesh.
I am literally using this because it was the only GW flesh tone I could find. You can see how it's been since I used it. It's in a dropper bottle, but it's completely clogged up.
Okay.
There it is. Right. So the trick with this, or the important thing with this, is because it's a face, we don't want it too thick.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to use quite a thin mix of this fleshy tone.
Yeah.
And we're just going to paint our guy. Just painting all the face. Now it's going to take a couple of coats because he's going to look all grey and nasty, but that's fine, doesn't really matter. It's better to take a few coats over this than to blotch it in because there's some pretty fine detail on this model. Evening, Michael. Resi, it cost me 200 to 250 for Infinity. Yeah, Infinity is crazy. I wouldn't buy one of those. I'd look at the cheaper models. And Trivial Pursuit. Good evening. Good evening, Trivial.
Good evening, dude. How you doing?
So again, if we were proper speed painting, we wouldn't do a bare head.
Okay.
But also we'd do multiple things, so we could speed this up with a hairdryer or something to let it dry. Because you need to make sure you've completely let it dry before you do coats of this.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Otherwise you're going to rip it. And it's going to look awful. So while that's drying on there, I'm going to start doing some hair. So for the hair, I'm just going to use that Mornfang Brown. It's on my palette already. And I'm going to paint the hair in.
Shouldn't it be golden hair since we're doing a Blood Angel?
Even if we're doing golden hair, we still start with a kind of mid-brown colour.
Okay, just checking. Just keeping you on your toes.
Do you want to do it golden? We can do it golden.
I was joking. I was going to say, like, get over some Reichland. What's it called? Retributor Gold.
Oh, you mean gold?
Yeah, I meant gold.
Oh, right.
Sanguinius golden hair.
Well, he hasn't got gold hair. He's got blonde hair.
Oh, they always say it's gold in the books, don't they?
Yeah, golden is not... He doesn't actually have gold hair. Not strands of actual gold. Or some lunatic...
How do you know what's happened in the 41st millennium?
Got the gold leaf out and gold-plated each one of his...
I was going to say, maybe he's like Rapunzel. You'll be reading that story to your daughter. I was going to say your daughter. No. You'll be maybe you won't be into Rapunzel, but my God, have we read Rapunzel a lot in my household.
Fair enough. Okay, so while that's drying, I can go back to the face, put a bit more of a coat on there.
All right, we'll bounce between those two.
Let's get a bit of that in there. I actually quite like painting faces, but I don't generally do them quickly, if that makes sense. There's something I like to take a bit of time over, again, because they're going to draw the eye. So it's worth spending your time on the face, even if you're going to rush through the rest of the model.
Okay.
Because if you've done a really good face, people won't even look at the rest of the model. They'll see the face, they might see a really beautifully blended weapon or whatever next to it, and the rest of it's just there, if that makes sense. It will fade into the background.
Robert's asking, how do you know Sanguinius' hair routine?
Have you looked at my username? What we got going on? Resi, hairdryers are a god's hair hack. Yeah, absolutely. Get a hairdryer. I would never be doing this without a hairdryer if we weren't streaming and it would overload the microphone. Don't they often describe Lorgar as having a somewhat golden sheen? Yes, they do, but he actually paints himself gold because he's that much of a prick. And I can't remember what book it was that I was reading where it's talking about the fact that they literally paint him with gold. And you just sort of think, what a knob. Ain't nobody got time for that. He should really be getting on with his job of, you know, taking over worlds, enforcing compliance. No wonder his Legion was shit at it. He's too busy painting himself gold before each fucking engagement.
Alright, I'm going to need one more coat in the face, but I'm almost there.
Yep. So, I did mention earlier that I'm not a fan of using washes, but we are actually going to use a bit of a wash in the face in a minute.
Okay.
And that's just because we're trying to speed things up.
Just going to see.
If it was for myself, I probably wouldn't bother. Again, because I like to take my time on the faces, but we're against the clock here, so we're going to do that. I'm just going to black out all the areas around his face that aren't his face, if that makes sense. So he's got like this weird chin guard and things on this model.
Okay.
Some sort of comm helmet or comm bead thing. Robert, I heard the last balanced data slate is due next Thursday. No one's interested in it anymore. Lol, everyone's looking onward to 10th. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's looking at 10th. They're not that fast, are they? So before we go on and we start doing the washes and things, I'm actually going to take this ivory colour of mine.
Okay.
And I'm going to mix it with a little bit of my skin tone to make a really, really bright skin tone.
Okay.
Really bright. And I'm just going to use that to do a couple of little highlights on things that are really going to draw the eye. So kind of the nose, a little bit on the cheeks, ears if you've got them. So just a couple of little highlights on it.
Ears if you've got them?
Well, some of the models don't have ears, John. I don't know whether yours has got them or not.
Oh, right, okay.
Because some of them, they have like a com. So mine's only got one. And it's got a kind of com thing on the other one. So across the eyebrow a little bit. I'm not trying to be super neat with this. I'm just, if anything, I'm exaggerating the highlight. Because when I knock it back a bit, I want to have a nice finish to it.
Perfect.
Okay. And we're going to do the same thing with the hair. So I'm going to take a bit of that skin tone and a bit of that Mornfang brown. I'm going to mix them together, and that's going to give me a slightly more actually a more peachy colour, to be honest. And we're going to use that to try and put some interest in our hair. So a bit like we did with the leather pouch, I'm just going to tippy tap it across that whole thing, because I'm just trying to get a little bit of like volumes into it. Now the hair on some of these models is dreadful because it's just like a lump, so there's no detail to it. So I'm really just trying to do random strokes in different directions, little short ones, just build up a little bit of texture. And then I'm going to go a bit lighter, so I'll bring a bit of the ivory in to our mix. I'll be a little bit sparing with this mix on the ivory, just to get a few gentle strokes and a little bit of detail in that hair. There we go.
That's gone too much.
We got Mike, you should wash your face every day. You absolutely should, especially if you're a Primarch. Resi says he's waiting for the date it's late because there's no point looking at 10th yet because it's not out, which makes sense. Chrono's using Kazakin as Voidsman.
Yeah, why not? Kazakin are cool.
They're cool models.
They're very similar to Tempest Scions. It makes sense.
So I didn't ask you earlier, John, but you said you got a sort of a fleshy wash. What one have you gone for?
I've got Reichland Flesh Shade. That's what I use on my gold armor.
So we're going to give that a good shake. You have literally opened this as a new pot. That shows how often I use it.
Okay.
And I'm going to take a bit of it on my palette. And I'm going to take a drop of water, just like literally a brush full.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using the clean water there. I don't want to use my dirty paint water for it.
Yeah.
And I'm just taking the edge off. I'm thinning it down ever so slightly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to slop that all over that model. All over his face.
Yeah.
Again, I don't really want it to pull too much if I can avoid it. So anywhere it starts to pull, I'm going to pull that away with my brush. But I do want it to get into the joints and sort of add a little bit of definition to them. I'd rather have to do a couple of coats of this than have it end up looking too lumpy.
Cool.
Michael uses his flesh washes neat. You can use it neat. And, well, you're an expert, mate, so maybe you know better than I do. I don't like washes because I don't like the lack... I hate the lack of control. But at least if they're thin, then I can build it up over time.
Yeah, I tend to use my washes neat as well, I think. Just maybe quite sparingly.
Yeah. Now I'm going to put him to one side, to be honest, because he needs to dry off now he's had that wash in him. And we'll go back to the main model. So let's start working on the silvers. So I've got some lead belcher here. Now you shouldn't really put lead belcher on a wet palette or any metallic paints because they can soak through the paper and end up in the sponge, which is annoying. So I've got a little metal tin here, which we're going to use for it. I'm going to take some lead belcher.
Yeah.
And a crappy brush. So this is it's a Kalinsky one. My old sable brushes become my metallic paint brushes usually.
Yeah.
Now you can dry brush this, but again, I don't like the lack of control, even when I'm trying to do things quickly.
Okay.
So I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to paint in all the areas that I want to have silver. So that's going to be these kind of bullets inside the drum mag. I'm going to do the drum mag itself. I'm not dry brushing because I don't like the lack of control, but I'm also not being that careful to really work it into all the gaps. If you can see what I'm doing there. So I'm not really trying to work the paint in. I'm just making sure that I've got all the flat areas covered. And then other than that, where it goes, if that makes sense.
Right.
And what that's going to do is, because I've not been too diligent about it, is it's going to leave a little bit of that black in the recesses. It's just going to help define it a little bit. So I'm just working it in, working it around. I'm not trying to be too neat with it, but I do want to try not to get it on any of the areas of the casing that I want to be black, like these areas we highlighted earlier. And I'm really not worrying about the back of the gun. I could try and get in there, but I'm not going to bother because you can't really see it, so we're not going to worry. If you can't see it, or can't get a brush in there, you probably can't see it. There are some exceptions to that rule, but not as many as you'd think. Oh, I've gone off the top of the page yet. I did, of course, make sure that I drilled my barrel.
Did you really?
Yeah, of course I did. I'm not a monster.
It's funny. Different people have different standards.
I don't paint things people can't see, but I find that not having the... To be honest, you don't have to. If you want, you can do the old black dot where the hole should be. And that looks fine. It's a pretty old school way of doing it, really. So I'm doing all my silver bits. I'm doing the vents on the back there. I've done the gun. Now you can use a bit of null oil for this if you like, but if you've been a bit... I know it sounds weird, but if you've been a bit lazy and not that diligent with your silver paint, you've left a bit of that black in the recesses anyway.
Yeah.
So you save yourself a step. You don't have to null oil it because null oils to put the black in the recesses. But you've done that just by not bothering to paint them. Which is another reason to make sure that you black them out before you put your silver on. I'll just catch up with chat for a minute.
Sure.
Chrono likes null oil neat. Turkey said, isn't that only with some kinds of palette paper? Those metal flakes are much larger than the water or other things that permeate the paper. They are. It depends on the paint and it depends on the paper. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. But if it leaks into like the side as well, then you've got a real issue. And that'll be a real pain in the ass to get rid of. Some people do it on the wet palette anyway. It doesn't. Swings and roundabouts. Mike paints it red. I even drilled the holes of the exhaust on my Brutalis. I always drill the holes on the exhausts. Resi puts a black dot on it.
Cool,
Turkey,
I do neither.
Yeah, Turkey. I forgot to drill a barrel once and the strange men wearing long coats attacked me with truncheons the next night. Good. I sponsor that. And Andrew actually drilled them for the first time the other day, which is also great. Foz likes to live dangerously. He uses metallics on his wet palette. He mixes his rinse water with his and uses it with sable brushes. And he uses chrome sockets on an impact wrench, so he's living dangerously. There we go. So how are you getting on, John?
I'm done. I've got one more like little bolt that I'm going to put metal on and I'm done, yeah.
So I'm going to put another coat of the wash on my... the fleshy wash on our guy. On my guy. because I want to get a bit more definition in there. Now we're speed painting here, so we're not going to worry about him looking too good, but we do want him to look all right. So let's go back then and do the next level on our metallic. So I'm going to get a bright silver colour now. And the thing with this is if we want, we can dry brush it and we can try and really carefully highlight it. But I find with a lot of metallics, it can look a lot better if you don't try and do too much. So all we're going to do with this really bright silver is do literally a couple of single points. So along the top of the barrel, I'm just going to do a single line along the top of that barrel like that. So any round surfaces, I'm just doing a single line of it along the sort of about 11 o'clock, if you know what I mean, if you think about it looking from the front.
Okay.
So just doing that one line, and then I'm doing a couple of edges on some of the really, really pronounced ones of the silvers. That's it. So a tiny bit along the top of there, tiny bit on there. Now, just by doing that single line, you might want to do it from the back as well. What that will do is it will almost act like a focal point, and it will make it look like a reflection. And because we've got quite a big jump between our silvers, it will make it look shinier than it really is because it will have more contrast. This camera's driving me crazy today. Let me just try and adjust it a little bit. You painting that yellow or gold?
I'm just slapping a quick cold coat on it to guess he's a sergeant. Well, I mean, that's what he is. He is the sergeant. He was an easy-to-build intercessor sergeant. There we go.
Okay, so that's really the bulk of it done. But let's go back and do our face again, because you've got to be fucking awkward and do a guy with a face.
I actually just give him his third coat of wash, so he's good.
Good, good. So to make him look a little bit better, I'm going to use a fine brush. And I'm going to use my kind of extreme highlight colour, again, that I use for the flesh. And I'm just going to pick out a couple of details. So the tip of his nose, that cheekbone, a little bit along there, a bit of that ear. So I'm just picking out a couple of the really prominent details. And because we've got all that wash on there, it's quite an extreme contrast. It should make it look a little bit better. It's my tippy-tappy technique along the edge of the hair. Again, just to get a little bit of contrast in there and make it look a little bit more interesting. Are we going to do his eyes, John?
Yeah, 100%. I was just going to paint them green, probably.
What? Not his helmet, his eyes.
Oh, his eyes. Okay, how would you do your eyes?
So if you... There's no real quick way of doing this. You can put a little bit of a wash in there to make sure the socket's nicely defined is the best way to do it. And then I'm going to use a nice little bit of white paint. I'm going to make sure it's nice and smooth, not too thick. I'm going to take a fine brush and I'm just going to take my time. If you put the model horizontal, so you've got a nice smooth stroke with your brush, you're not fighting against that. Make sure I've got a perfect tip on my brush and I'm just going to work my way along it. You might have to come in and out a couple of times. That's fine. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
There we go. And then the really disconcerting bit, because you don't want him to look cross-eyed or boss-eyed or anything like that. We're going to take a little dot of the black. And just put that in there.
I give that white 2 seconds to dry.
It's so thin it should dry almost instantly. And if you have made a bit of a fuck up of it like I have, you can always clean it up with a little bit of the flesh colour. It's fine.
Didn't fuck it up. I'm sure I'm going to fuck up the black though.
There it is. And that'll do for his face. We're not trying to do anything too fancy, because we're against the clock. With
How many letters you got?
How many letters?
Yeah.
Oh, right. I get it now. Resi, what metal paint did I choose? So it's not really that important. It's kind of what ones you've got. So I used base and lead Belcher because I thought John would have that. And I didn't have any GW brighter ones, so I've used Dark Star Pewter as my bright silver. It's not a bad paint. It works okay. It's just as long as what you're really looking for is a nice contrast between the two colours.
Okay.
So, are we going to do the eyes on the helmet then, yeah?
I just did them.
Did you? That was quick.
Yeah, I'm going to try and do this tiny little dot in the middle of this eye now, which is not going to go well.
So I'm going to do my helmet then, and I've got a darkish green. This is Black Forest Green from Scale 75. Again, this is because I don't own any Citadel paints in this colour, to be honest.
He definitely looks mental now that I've done the eyes.
It's better, isn't it?
Not sure.
That's looking all right. I think you probably want to put a couple of highlights on that skin. Just brighten it up in a few places, because it's looking a little bit flat at the moment.
I was going to say it looks a bit dingy and...
Yeah.
Not the huge, like on my own models, generally I avoid unhelmeted heads. And if the character has an unhelmeted head, then I'll like buy a third-party Blood Angel's head and get it on there.
I quite like unhelmeted heads, but I find them fun to paint. So what I'll tend to do is take them all off, and I'll do a few at once.
That's fair enough. I mean, that's why I did all my incursors with beak heads rather than
I just didn't like the stupid Geordie the Forge visors. No. It's nothing against the bareheadedness. So what I've done is I've used this dark green for the main lens. I've just taken my time. I've gone with the grain of the model. And then I'm going to take this kind of bright green, and I'm going to do the last third of it with a brighter green.
Yeah, I've got the bright green here as well.
Keep getting my head in the way of the camera, and I'm just a pain in the ass. Okay, and then I'm going to take the white paint and I'm going to do a little dot. Now I want to get the dot, if I can, right at the transition point between the bright and the darker greens. So I've got a nice thin brush, I've got a nice smooth point, and I'm just going to do a single dot, and then I'm going to fuck it up because I'm on camera.
There it goes.
There we go. I don't know if that's come out on the camera, but it should have done. Should look all right. There it is. Focus that a bit. There it is. And again, because people look at the faces, it's important to try and do things like eyes, because it massively elevates the model. Yeah, the Dark Star paints, Resi, they're not bad. They're very runny, and I'm not sure that I recommend all of them. I actually bought the whole range of them to test them out, but I haven't finished working my way through them yet. They're different to the GW ones, because the GW ones use mica flakes to make them sparkly, whereas the Dark Stars actually metal flakes. They are real metal, which gives them a very different finish. Some of them can be quite chunky pigments, but it's quite nice. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the stream. Trivial. I've spent a long time avoiding unhelmeted heads if it's all possible. I've decided to find as many bare heads as I can, just paint loads of them until I get used to them. That's the plan anyway. The VMC are the best I've found among acrylics. In this case, VMC Velo metal colour. I do like the metal colour, but they're extremely runny, which has got its place. And for this sort of thing, I prefer a thicker paint. Okay, so I think we're getting there, John, to be honest.
No, I was going to say, to me, this guy looks like he's done. He's speed painted, is he?
He's not far off. All we're going to do now is we're going to try and put a little bit of interest in there. I'm going to cover up some of our fuck-ups. And this is where we're going to do a little bit of weathering. So I've got a little bit of sponge here. So this is literally just a packing piece out of a case. And I've just torn off a piece of this sponge. And you can do this with your fingers, or you can do what I'm going to do if I can find them, which is use a pair of tweezers. He says, and he can't find his tweezers. We'll have to do with that. So we're going to take a little bit of the sponge. It's all torn up, and I'm going to take a little bit of that Rhinox hide.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dipping the sponge directly in it, and I'm going to take a chunk of that paint off. And then I'm literally going to dab the model around, especially the feet, the edges of the ankles. And what this is going to do is just going to rough up those edges a little bit. And it's going to add a little bit of interest. Well, annoyed I can't find my tweezers. It's bugging me. And I got them all out before the stream. So I'm just working my way along the feet. I'm working my way along anywhere that I think might get a bit knocked. And because we're using the sponge, that's just going to randomly put little brown patches where the paint has been effectively worn a bit by battle and things like that. Just gently weathering a little bit of paint around the legs, around the arms and that where he might have been punching things.
Right, well, I don't have any sponge, so I failed you on that part.
You failed me on that part, have you, John?
I got this far.
You got this far.
I mean, I'm pleased with where I've got to with how little time I've spent on it. Because how long have we been live? Like hour and a half?
We haven't been long. Yeah, something like that. We went live at
like,
1:30. We are. See, I've been live about an hour and a half, John.
I feel like I need about 5 or 6 hours normally to paint an intercessor.
Well, he's.
Oh shit! My daughter's up. I'll be back in a sec. Sorry.
Fair enough. I'll catch up on some chat while John's gone away for a moment. They're thin, you load less, you get better control. They're fun, but they're just, I don't like them for all applications. They do airbrush well. Sellers, I've heard for decades how you need 2 water spots, one for metallics and one for non-metallics. Yeah, you do. It's because occasionally you get random pigments. It's not that big a deal, but it does happen a little bit if you've been using them a lot. So as John's wandered off, we're going to do another stage of this. And what I'm going to do is we're going to base him. So I've got a normal 32mm base here. I'll take him off that bottle cap that we were using as a stand. And we're going to glue him on there. If you don't have this challenge, you can try flicking paint with your brush, but of course it gives you less control. You can, and I find that means you often get paint on the areas of the model that wouldn't be naturally weathered so much, which I think can be quite an issue. So we'll stick him on there. You guys are live long enough for me to do a load of dishes and prep, cook and finish dinner for me and 3 little dudes. We have been live a fair while, yeah. Oh, it sounds like John's daughter's up there. So, because we're doing this really quickly, we're going to do a cheat way of basing him as well. So I've just glued him onto a base. There he is. And I haven't got time to be using texture paints or anything like that. What we're going to do is we're going to get some pigment powders. So I've got some dark earth pigment powder from Forge Rod. I don't even know if they make this stuff anymore, but plenty of people do. Be careful with this. You do not want to get it on things. And then I'm going to get an old stippling brush, or an old stiff brush. I very much doubt they'll still make stippling brushes, but this is great for using these kind of pigments. I'm going to take a bit of this pigment and I'm going to work it into his feet and across onto the base. So I'm just bopping it on. I'll be a bit careful with the stippling brush because it's actually quite stiff and it will take the paint off if you're not careful. So I'm working it into his feet and onto the base. And then I'm going to take another pigment. I'm going to get a lighter one. And in this case, I'm going to use one known as Light Earth. And same thing again. So I'll take a little bit of that. Not too much. Pigments are really powerful. You don't want to use too much of it. But again, I'm just working it into the base of the model. I'm into the feet of the model. And it's going to tie it together. So. And then because he's on Baal, I'm going to take a more rusty colour and put that in there as well. Joel, should I get a wet palette? Yes, yes you should. They're really useful. They make a huge difference to what you're doing. There we go. And that's just giving him a bit of a base and he's tied him all together. Which I'm quite pleased about. So, I'll bring up the big chat window for a second while we're waiting for John.
Sorry, I'm back.
Oh, he's back. So all I've done, John, is I've just based him.
Oh, you did base him.
So
okay.
So obviously you're going to base him however you want, but I've just shown a quick way of doing it. And all I've done is I've stuck him onto a base, and then I've got a couple of different pigments. So I've got a light earth pigment there. I've got a dark earth pigment, and I've got a rusty one, and I've just worked them into the feet and onto the base, and that's just tied it all together to make it look like he's part of the world, not on the world.
Okay.
I've not painted it at all, and that's him done. He's ready to go in again. The only thing we haven't done is the chapter badge. Now, you can use transfers for this. I recommend using transfers for this, or you can try and freehand on the badge. Or if you're feeling really cheeky, you can draw on your chapter badge with a pen.
I was going to say you could probably just paint on a yellow blood drop or something for Blood Angels.
You could. What are you going to go with, John? Are you going to paint a chapter badge on there or not?
Freehand a Blood Angels chapter badge?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you're cheating. You're using a... what the hell is that?
It's a pen.
You're using a pen. Okay. It's going to ruin a really good painted model, but okay.
Now, something you can do, because I've done a really shit job here with this pen, look, I'm just sketching it on, right? And it looks fucking shit. Okay? It's a blob, basically. But if you've done like I have and you've gone, right, well, that was a waste of time, I fucked that right up. Something you can do is then get some nice thin white paint.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually highlight your chapter badge. So I've gone in there, look, with the white paint, and I'm starting to work the shape back into it, because it's just a blob with a black marker pen, really. That's all I've done. But by getting with the white paint in there, I'm getting a little bit of definition in.
That's clever, actually, yeah.
And it just suddenly makes it look a lot less shit than it otherwise would look.
Okay, mine looks decidedly average. I don't do freehanding. But...
No, nor do I. I'm shit at it. But I think this is quite a nice little tip for if you have had a go at it and you're not happy with it. Just get the white paint out and just add a little bit of definition to it. And because you're doing it over the black and you've got a nice thin white paint, it'll actually show through.
I come back in a million years and I'll have freehanded a yellow blood drop onto it.
It's not great, but it is clearly what it is now.
Nice.
That's what we've done. And then the other old trick from the old White Dwarf days was, do you remember the White Dwarf How to Do a Blood Drop that they did many years ago?
Yes, with the little dot of white.
So get a paintbrush, bring it to a nice point, and then carefully press it into the model. And it should, if you've got a nice sharp point on there, give you kind of basic blood drop outline. You're just laying it on there.
Yeah.
And you can cheat and use my outlining it with white thing again.
Excuse me.
And that will just add a bit of definition to it and make it look like it's supposed to be there and it's not just a fuck up.
The way I'm doing it at the moment, which I actually kind of like, is I put the transfer on and then I just paint over to the transfer.
Oh, yeah, that's it. If you're going to use transfers, use transfers. This is me just fucking about trying to speed it up.
I was going to say, and then the thing about painting over the top of the transfer is you can essentially trace the transfer, which makes it so easy.
Tony, can we somehow make John's camera primary? If you want, yeah. Watch John for a bit.
We can take a couple of higher photos and send it across.
So I've just put you.
I don't know how well. I was just going to say, I don't know how well it focuses.
It's coming out all right. Looks all right.
I mean, I never speed paint, so I guess there's that.
But you have done a guy. You picked a particularly fancy guy, and you've done him in hour and a half.
9 minutes.
That's all right, isn't it?
Yeah, if I was going to do another army, I guess this is the technique I would use because that cuts it to about a fourth of the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, like I said, I think it normally takes me about 6 hours to do an intercessor.
Oh yeah, I've left you up there.
I was going to say maybe even longer when I do transfers and all that.
Oh yeah, I'd absolutely transfer rather than doing that on there. This is it. You haven't got any transfers and you want to do it. You think it looks a bit shit. If you put the white over the top, it can really sort of add a bit of interest to it. And it just makes it look a little bit better than it does otherwise.
Yeah.
You can also do that with transfers. If you transfer on, say, a black blood drop, and then you get your white paint over that, and you just add a few highlights to it, it'll add a bit of definition to it, and it will make it look less like a transfer.
Yeah.
The other thing to do, of course, is to weather over the top of it. So, like my one, for example, if I'm thinking, okay, well, it looks a bit stuck on there, well, I can go back to the Rhinox hide and the bit of sponge, and just sponge on a few chips.
I also find those yellow transfers you get for Blood Angels kind of, if you compare them to Averland Sunset, they're kind of an obnoxious yellow. They're like a whole level of yellow brighter. I don't know what yellow paint that is.
Yeah,
so sometimes I will paint excuse me, I'll repaint over the blood drops with Averland Sunset, and I won't care if I haven't done it like a full coverage. It's just to try and bring it back down a little bit to tie in better with like their helmet or whatever other part of the model might be yellow, if that makes sense. Cool. So, I was very nervous coming on here. I thought I would do terrible in 90 minutes. I thought there's no fucking way I can paint a marine in 90 minutes.
I think you've done a good job there. I'm going to blow you back up again so everybody can have a proper look. We'll take some photos, we'll stick them up there, and we'll put them as somewhere. But the point of this is it doesn't matter what kit you've got or how well you've done it before or whatever. You can get a decent amount in a reasonable amount of time using a few simple techniques, just whatever you've got lying about. You know,
yeah, I mean, this is just the most basic of stuff. I don't have anything fancy.
No. It's not the way that I would do it myself for my own army, but that's not the point. The point is, it doesn't matter what you've got. Use what you've got, and you can get a good result. So I think on that note, it's probably about time for us to be finishing. So yeah. I'll move John across like that. I'm going to move myself up so that people can see me again. I can't believe the camera hasn't cut out. There I am. And let everybody see my beautiful t-shirt. Thanks for watching, everybody. We haven't decided yet whether we're going to try and edit this down into a shorter video. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Depends if people want it. But if you can like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And I think we will have to catch you on the next one when we should have Mark with us. Who's on his holidays.
He's on his holidays, yes. If no one asked where Mark was tonight, I guess. And one of us might be. Summer's coming up. I'm sure I'll be on holiday at some point. Yeah. But no, thanks, Tony. I mean, I honestly was quite nervous. I honestly thought I couldn't do it. But I never tried. You know, I'm an old man stuck in my ways. Is what I am.
If this content is of interest to people, let us know. We can do some other ones. We can look at other things to paint. Maybe do some gold or something like that.
Yeah, I think we could totally edit it into like 10 quick steps, or however many steps it was, and get it out as a shorter form for the future. So we'll see if we can't do that and get that out as well.
Yep. All right then, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yes. See you in a couple of weeks, guys. Thanks so much
guys.
for hanging out. Cheers. Bye-bye.